Today's edition of the podcast is brought to you by Coach Me Plus. Coach Me Plus is the leader in athlete management software and a product that I've been lucky enough to be using for a little over a year now. Only rivaled by the impeccable customer service that Kevin and his staff provides, Coach Me Plus's ability to constantly be amoeba-like in their ability to mold and matriculate what you're trying to get across and bring together is absolutely fantastic. Their constant pursuit of better ways and better methods and innovations and progress to their own product is absolutely fantastic. Go over to CoachMePlus.com. Check out what they got, guys. It's something that I guarantee you won't be disappointed with. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, guys, I get the pleasure of sitting down and talking training with Chris Korfist. And guys, we're going to talk about how he's taken different ideas from different people, ranging from DB Hammer and Cal Dietz and his past football experiences, and really manipulated his own training program based on what he has seen when it comes to translation to track and field performance. Some really, really awesome stuff. And speaking of Cal Dietz, Chris is a partner with Cal and JL Holdsworth with the RPR system. So, of course, we can't go without talking about RPR, where he sees it fitting, and all those things. It's really an awesome talk, guys. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Chris, thanks for being on with us today, man.
Thanks for having me on.
So, Chris,
it's a pleasure.
Yes, and you have a very interesting background when it comes to being a successful track coach and working with American football. And I think that what would be really interesting to the people that listen, on the regular here with us is, what do you see as a guy who works in both track and football that shows up and actually matters when it comes to getting kids to perform better?
Sure. Well, you have it backwards. I'm a football coach that became a track coach.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it started. I was, growing up, I didn't run track in high school. I lie. I ran my freshman year, and I was a high hurdler. And this is back in the cinders days, and I spent more time pulling cinders out of my body than getting over hurdles. And it was just a task to finish the race. But I was always been, interested in improving my speed. And I would listen to someone, and they wouldn't, it wouldn't happen. Squat 500 pounds. That seemed to be the magic number back in the day. And, you get that number, and then it's not happening. So as I progressed through the ranks, I played football in college, and I was a GA at Northern Illinois, and I worked with the football team there. I went into high school, and I was a football coach that ran the strength program. And my second year there, the head football coach / athletic director called me into office and said, "Hey, you're the new track coach." I said, "Well, I guess we're going to just go start squat and cleaning and doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing." And I wasn't winning. And I don't like that. So I started exploring other modes and methods and techniques and things like that to win track races. And so I was both coaching football and track for 12 years. And the head football coach's idea is he wanted to meld those two programs together into one, where it's kind of like off-season football training during track where you're working on speed. And as I started getting more success on the track, we started winning a lot more football games, to the point where we would lose maybe 1 or 2 games a year. And it wasn't supposed to happen, because where I coached and teach was upper class high school, where we were really good at country club sports, and we weren't supposed to be fast, but yet we were getting thirds and fourths in the 4x1s at the state track meet. And so that's kind of where I got that's where it started to branch off, when the head football coach / AD retired, and they brought in a new football coach whose goal was, there's no more track, there's no more running, we're just going to be in the weight room, and that's how we're going to win games. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I know it's winning games for us. So I quit. I went to another school where we had an incredible amount of success, and I just did track. But at the same time, I opened up my own gym, and everyone knows my own gym is really my basement. I've got all kinds of crazy stuff in my basement, my driveway, and my street. It's all marked out. And started training the football players from my old school that would come and train with me because they still wanted to be fast, and then other people started coming as well. So that I'm not truly a track coach. I became a track coach. I'm really a football guy at heart. So as I progressed, to answer your question, and I'm getting your question now, so I'm sorry for the tangent there.
No, I love
it. So kind of where stuff that I think is important that I can see a carryover into both. I think my base exercise would be an isometric split squat. And there's two ways you do it. You can do the 30-second hold way, which is kind of the way we start out, just so you can get to be in that position and be a little uncomfortable. And then we progress to the Cal Dietz 5 seconds down, or down fast and hold for 5 seconds. So we start dabbling into the triphasic stuff. To me, that is one exercise that I have seen that regardless of whatever sport you play, basketball, track, football, field hockey, that has a good carryover into acceleration in some top-end sprint mechanics. The guys that progress in that lift get faster. And for me, and probably like you somewhat, you're in Southern Virginia, right?
Yeah, right in the middle. Yeah, right in the middle.
So it's warmer there than here.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And that works for me in the wintertime because we can't get out and run here in the wintertime. I wish global warming would come back and wipe away January and February so we could get out and run, but it hasn't been that way for a while. So, I kind of got stuck where I had to find something that was worthwhile because I didn't want to waste people's time and say, why don't you just come hang out with me for a couple months down in the basement? We'll screw around a little bit and we'll do some crazy stuff, and then hopefully it comes out at the back end. Because at the same time, while I've got these clients coming in, I also have a team that I'm responsible for, and they have expectations, I have expectations, and I can't waste 2 months wasting time and then just expect it to happen when you get on the track. I needed to find things that had some carryover. And so for me, iso split squat, whether you have one foot back, 1 foot up, you can do all kinds of variations. That was really important. And I think just as important is the technique that you use to get down in that position. The way I coach it is someone's pulling your knee forward, and when that knee can't go any further forward, someone pushes your hip back. And so when you sit down into that position, that ankle locks in, and you'll feel all the pressure go right into your butt and your hamstring. And so an easy way to coach that from the side, if you're watching from the side, are the shins in spine parallel. And I think there's variations on that. Like you can push your chest over the knee to get more hamstring, but someone who's weak is going to break somewhere in the torso and they can't hold that position at all. So I guess we're kind of training to a position, to a finished position of some sort. So that's certainly one thing that has had great carryover for us. Another thing for me is we do a lot of lateral hip strength. I don't care what sport you're in, if you're crossing over or that foot's coming, you're running a tightrope, whether you're accelerating, especially when you're accelerating, or top end speed, you can't run a tightrope. So if I'm stuck down in the basement, I have a 4-way hip machine. We do a lot of stuff sideways on a Swiss ball. We'll change that environment and we'll put a rubber band around your shoulder and you got to drive up through your big toe. But if you can't lock that hip in and hold that leg in place, you're never going to run fast. And that carries over into agility runs as well. If you're hitting middle when you go to cut, it's going to take a lot of time for your body to reposition so that ankle can actually push. So again, we want some really strong lateral strength so we can put that foot down, make a cut, and it can stay on the outside of our frame and get a quicker push.
I love this. So let's take 2 steps back really quick because Cal Dietz is a friend of both of ours. When you talk about this split squat and you work into it to the triphasic after you get through the 30-second holds, do you follow it like by the book?
It matters how many people I have. If I'm doing an individual, we're going to go a lot of different ways. If I have a group, like I have football teams that I train, I'm staying to triphasic. For a group setting, I think that's gold. I mean, when I read Cal's book, I didn't even know Cal. I just read it and I thought, wow, that's probably one of the best books I've read on strength training. And then he called up. This is kind of embarrassing. He called up to ask about RPR, and I go, "Is this Cal Dietz, like the Cal Dietz that wrote Triphasic Training?" And now I know Cal really well, and I think, boy, that was a really stupid thing for me to say. But yeah, it's a great program, and that's kind of why we wrote Triphasic Training for football, is because Cal wanted to have more of a speed element to what he was doing. And so that's why we wrote that book. It's got elements of triphasic, true triphasic, and a lot of what I do develops speed and agility.
Yeah, and you know what? I've read the article. I heard you talk about it with Joel, and I love the whole idea of, you know, if you want to be faster, maybe squatting is not the way to go.
Yeah.
And you give a lot of really good alternatives.
Yeah. But you still have old school, you got to be squatting. And the problem is, in a team setting, especially in a high school team setting, you don't have eyes everywhere. And sometimes kids come in there and they're getting slower by their really bad technique. And it's just not enough bang for the buck for me. And I'll even have parents come in and say, well, why aren't you squatting? Some business guy and say, you really want to have this conversation with me? Okay, let's sit down. Let's talk about squatting if you want to talk training. And then they back off because, you throw up one thing. Oh, well, this is how I did in high school. Well, it's not 1983 anymore. The bigger, faster, stronger poster isn't up in the weight room anymore. If your goal is speed, then we need to run, and we need to have exercises that have a better impact, more bang for your buck for where you want to get to. I think JL at our track football consortium last month, JL Holdsworth came and did a presentation on the squat. And it was great because he questioned, why are we using standards set by three guys back in the 1960s in Missouri to measure how we're doing our sport, or how we're working here. Maybe it's time to change. Maybe we need to bend the ankle. And he had a good point. He goes, nobody's done more squatting here than me. I've squatted over 1,000 pounds. I broke my back doing it. I've got a lot in there. I've got a lot in this, and I love powerlifting. I love squatting, but I also run a business, and I got to have repeat customers. I got to have people coming back in. So it's time to change. And I think when JL said that, of course, people got angry and all that. And, JL's a traitor. All the typical responses that people will have when, you've insulted someone's exercise, which almost becomes a religion. But what people forget, it's just an exercise. It's just an exercise. It's not a way of life. It can be if you make it that, but if you want to get people from point A to B faster, I don't think it's the best way.
Yeah, it's funny, with divorce rates at like 50% in this country, people marry exercises and they go to war for them.
Yeah.
And I've learned more than I could ever imagine from Dr. Yesis, and he's talked about kind of like the joke of depth forever. And, Brian Mann talked about at the seminar this weekend, the reason we have all these lifts and do all these things is because all strength coaches were either weightlifters, power lifters, or bodybuilders.
Yeah.
So they all look at it that way. And I've never thought of it like that. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah. And it's true. And, these people have squatted their whole life and they love to squat or clean or whatever their lift is. And it's hard to separate from that because I think people have a hard time admitting that they may have been wrong for a while.
Yeah, 100%.
I admit I'm wrong all the time. I screw up every day. That's why I'm constantly changing things. As I look at stuff, and with all the equipment I have, I get numbers back. Whether I'm on the 1080 or whatever. I'm thinking this is bad. This isn't going the right way. I got to change what I'm doing here. Good point is, I mentioned earlier about, you got to be wide when you accelerate. And so on the 1080, you have people that come out of the blocks or out of their stance or whatever position they're in. And if they're running the tightrope, they're going to drop their power output by about 30 to 40% just by their width of their first 3 steps. And to me, that's shocking. And, until I was sitting behind, I sit on the 1080 so it doesn't move when we go heavy because I don't have it anchored. I move it around everywhere. And so I'm staring at people's asses all day watching them go. And then I'm starting to realize, hey, the guys that step wide when they accelerate, they're generating a lot of power. They're generating a lot of distance. They're getting great projection. That's something I never thought of before. So again, just by sitting and watching and not being married to things and seeing what's going on, you got to make changes. And again, it's just an exercise. You can tell people, you know what, I learned something new and we're getting better. And I don't think people have a problem when you say, hey, I'm working to get better here. They'll move along with you if they believe in what you're doing.
Oh, no doubt about it. And that's kind of funny too, because that's another thing that a lot of coaches would probably teach a different way.
Yeah. There's good research that just came out beginning of the summer. Japanese guy, Nagahara, I think is his last name, and did a whole thing on stride width for up to 80 meters. And your fast guys are sub 10.5. Their stride width for the first 3 steps is 13 inches apart.
Wow.
And when you think about that, we sometimes put kids getting ready for their 40-yard dash. They're almost on a tightrope. One foot's, side by side or at least centrally located underneath their hip. And what a disadvantage to put them at, because now they've got to step out wide and they're creating a diagonal force instead of getting a little wider stance and pushing out. And, it's kind of funny. You go along with tradition, you look at stride block or sprint blocks in the cheap ones, how narrow they are. Maybe because when they dug the holes back in the 1930s, they made them narrow. I don't know why they do that. Or it's a lot cheaper. You use a lot less material to build something that narrow so you can sell them cheaper, and schools are cheap. But, that's one of the big discoveries this summer is that width when you come out of the hole, and I don't care if it's 2-point, 3-point, 4-point, is vital to generating a lot of power and a lot of velocity early on.
No, yeah, and being a football guy, I mean, that 3-step velocity is
huge.
Oh, God, yes.
You go to some of these camps, and we had some guys. I did a cool thing with Ken Clark this summer on overspeed training, and we had some really good big-time Division I players come in, and they didn't hit great times like our elite sprinters did in their flies, but their first 3 steps from any position was really impressive. And really that's what you need, because that's what gets your feet in place so you don't have to step out in front, and your better balance is that initial push.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to piggyback off something that you talked with Joel the last time you were on Just Fly.
Sure.
Because a lot of people, to go against another thing that a lot of coaches do, A skips, B skips, C skips.
Mm-hmm.
And how you've gone away from those and some things that you're implementing that you're seeing success with, as opposed to as I'm air quoting right now, traditional track exercises that strength coaches would look at.
Right. So I tried A skips and B skips. I've seen Lauren Seagrave speak. I've seen Kevin O'Donnell speak. I bought all the videos. And back in the mid-90s, my guys could do them like in the video. We could line up and look great. You could hear us coming because we were all perfectly in sync, and it was quite a spectacle. But when we got on the track, it didn't seem to carry over. I didn't see a pawing action when they were sprinting in a B skip. You got to be really cruising to get that paw action. And part of that paw action is because of the velocity that you've created in your acceleration that allows for that to happen. But to drill it made no sense to me. And with an A skip, there's no real target in what you're doing. It's just a skip. And it's a nice coordination skip. But again, I just didn't see it happening for my team. And so even though we spent years drilling it and I had cool techniques and stuff like that, I had to get rid of it because I wasn't getting any bang for my buck. And so kind of the progression is we went to just doing stiff-legged runs as a warm-up, and that works pretty well. But still, I was missing a coordination aspect. And so I kind of got into the Franz Bosch drills, and I like those a lot better because there's a target that athletes can reach for. There's good scissoring action. It's got all of the attractors in movement that you're working for. And ideally, it's that finished position with that hip high, where that hip is supporting your body weight and that knee is up. And so you constantly drill that finished position as you're moving. And what I have found this summer, this is kind of crazy. I get bored. I started dragging people on my 1080 and doing overspeed with drills. And it works really well. It works really well because I'm changing the environment, and your body has to get ready for that contact faster, so it gets your body into a better position. I've got video. I've got articles that I'm working on. Change foot contact patterns, toe off patterns, all kinds of stuff just by making things happen faster. Because if you go to a bad or a poor pattern, you're going to fall, and you know you're going to fall, and you're moving fast. So you've got to be in that perfect position. I couldn't do that with an A skip or a B skip. It would just be the same. In fact, you would probably slow the machine down because it's just not something that we really do when we sprint. So yes, I've gotten away from them. I didn't get any bang for buck for them. So I've got these drills that I use now. I call them boom booms. That's one series, and then some of them are a lot of lateral hip stuff where you're really asking the lateral hip to do a lot in bad positions. So when you sprint, it's going to be more natural to get that foot underneath. You're challenging and you're learning where to put that foot.
So now, what drills are you looking at? So if you could break down the boom boom drill, and then what other drills are you doing in the overspeed stuff? Hawkins spent a whole bunch of time talking about that this weekend too. So this is pretty neat right now for me.
So this is going to sound crazy. So I have knee-high hurdles that I make out of PVC. And I put them, I actually challenge how far I can pull them apart. And so you get one skip in between each hurdle. And so as you step over this hurdle, you're getting dragged. And on that skip, it's kind of like a triple jump almost. If you don't absorb all that energy when you come down, you're going to miss that next hurdle. So that next hurdle is your target that you've got to get to. So you're teaching that hip to stiffen up when you hit the ground, and they almost learn how to bounce across while going over these hurdles. And then to challenge them more, I'll put their hands up over their head. I'll have them carry a crowbar or a curl bar. And now we're starting to do co-contraction twists into the knee that's coming up, and that's worked really well. So that's one drill we do. Another drill, and it's really simple, and you don't need a 1080 to do this, because I'm always trying to find things for coaches that they can use, because not everyone's stupid, and not stupid, but willing to put the money out to buy a 1080 and has a wife that lets them do that. Actually, she just doesn't look ever to see what I have coming and going. I'm pulling people over mini hurdles, and that's been incredibly effective. And we're only getting about 5 hurdles in. So for the person who doesn't have a 1080, or I love Hawkins' machine. I've emailed him about it before. I put together about 5 or 6 jump stretch bands, and I'll give you a good pull, and that seems to be enough to generate that same speed that you're getting pulled with the 1080 to come over the hurdles. And what happens when you get pulled over the hurdles is, again, if your foot isn't perfect, you're going to fall. And the mini hurdle marks is a target that you've got to get over. And I think when you go a little bit faster, and it's just a little bit faster, you're going to make that hurdle. And so you've got to be perfect every time. I know this is weird, but I've had a string of distance runners that have started doing it this summer, and they're getting these incredible PRs in their runs. And everyone's asking, what are you doing? And they say, well, I'm getting dragged over hurdles. What does that mean? Well, this guy's got this machine and it pulls me, and I got to go over really fast, and then it just seems to carry over when you run. And again, that's something I'm always looking for, is what's the carryover from the exercise to when I actually go out and watch you run. Is it working? If it's working, I should see some effect right away. As you go out, there's going to be some potentiation to carry over. So that's one thing I'm looking for. And again, there should be long-term stuff. This stuff we did with Ken Clark this summer, it was about 3 weeks ago, I think, right after 4th of July. We were doing overspeed testing. We had all kinds of cameras and a radar gun and the 1080, and we're getting all these measurements, which Ken is going to present later. It's pretty wild stuff. The kids, we had some track clubs come where these kids run 10.4, 10.5. They're some of the best sprinters. We had Division III guy that's a 10.3 guy. But the kids that came on a Thursday, they had a meet on a Saturday, a national qualifier at Northern Illinois University. And I dragged them. They only got 2 pulls. We dragged them. And I know Aachen talks about 3%. It's hard to find that 3%. We were pulling them between 7 and 10% over their speed. But what our video shows, and Ken's got this camera that does 950 frames per second, wow, that there was very little change in body position at that 7 to 10% speed, which is what we want. But ground contact time was greatly improved. And if you look at his algorithm on how to generate force, you're putting more out. In fact, you can read that on the 1080, that when you're dragging people, if you're dragging them right, they're putting out some serious power when you're dragging them at the right speed. So these kids go out on Saturday. Everyone runs a PR. Some people PR'd by as much as a half a second in a 200-meter dash.
Wow.
This kid ran 21.1. Not a football player, though, but he's a track dude. I mean, he was state champion in the 100-meter dash and 200-meter dash 3 months ago, but he beat that time. And I think there's a big difference between being at the state track meet where there's 25,000 people and being at a national qualifier at Northern Illinois out in the middle of the cornfields, and there's maybe 50 people in the stands at 7 a.m. in the morning. And these kids still went out and they smashed all the records.
You're telling me a 10.5 kid just popped off a 21.1?
Yeah, 10.4 kid. 21.12.
But he held his 100.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But he ran his 100 at 7 a.m. in the morning.
That's crazy to me, though.
Yeah, he ran 10.48 at 7 a.m. He ran 10.41 at the state prelims with thousands of people there at 3:30 in the afternoon. And then came back later that afternoon and ran 21.12 when he won state with 21.6.
So these articles that you guys are putting out, where are people going to be able to find them?
I've got some on Simply Faster, but I think we're going to start to print more on Track Football Consortium, which is Tony Holler and I's web page for our biannual clinic, kind of like what you run, which I haven't been to yet. I'm going to make it one of these times, where we invite people in to speak. We've had Stuart McMillan from Altus. We've got all kinds of people that come and go. The bulk of it are high school coaches Cal comes every time. Cal's always good. I mean, Cal's great. But we try and make it a lot of high school coaches who have had a lot of success to share with other high school coaches. Because it's one thing if you get to work with guys that run 10 flat and 9.9 and all that. I think high school coaches want to make their 11.3 a 10.9, and their kid that runs 4.7 bring them down to 4.5 and stuff like that. More realistic everyday stuff. is kind of what we're looking for. And our goal is to try and get more two-sport athletes where kids run track and play football or play basketball and run track. I think this idea of specialization is probably one of the worst things that's happened to sports here in the United States. We don't have athletes anymore.
No, we don't. And I can tell you that from seeing it on a daily basis at college. But yeah, it's we've got a lot of kids that are specialized early. Well, we're gonna definitely make sure we put a connection to both of those, because Chris is an awesome guy and they do great things at Simply Faster, and talking with Calvin, always hear great things about what you guys are doing with the talks up there, up north. And I think that since we've mentioned him and yours and his relationship a few times, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about those 3 letters that everybody's talking about right now, and that's RPR a little bit. So Brajesh was on about a month ago talking about it. I guess my main question about it, Chris, just to be simple, is like, how'd you guys come up with all this?
We didn't. It's not ours. Douglas Heel, it's B activated. So I think 7 years ago, my friend Dan Fichter and I were both always deep in some wormhole trying to learn new stuff. He's a football track coach up in Rochester, New York.
Where in Rochester?
Irondequoit.
Oh, no way. That's where my parents graduated from.
Yeah, he's an Irondequoit guy.
Yeah, I grew up in upstate New York.
Yeah, it's a nice place. Underrated, in my opinion, completely underrated as a place to live. The food's not great there, but
you brought up global warming, and it's kind of why I still live in Richmond and not in Rochester.
It does snow constantly in Rochester and Buffalo. It's just the degree of snow that's coming down.
Facts. But yeah, I digress. Go back to your story. I'm sorry.
So Dan went to London to see Douglas, not really sure what was going on. And this is back, you couldn't text like on a cell phone type thing. It was, a flip phone type thing. And he's trying to explain to me on the flip phone what's going on. He's too cheap to make the phone call, I guess. But he faxed me a diagram of the points to press on. And I said, all right, I'll try it. And so I had some client come over and I said, hey, lay down. Let me try this on you. I'm just going to press on you in some places. I want to see what happens. And it worked. I'm like, wow, this is kind of nuts. So Dan and I brought Douglas out to do a seminar here in Chicago. We had about 30 people on our first one. And he taught the whole system. And again, it's mind-blowing. It's when it happens to you for the first time and you get reset for the first time, you go out. Like I went out and I sprinted. I went out into the street and I sprinted because I felt like I was 18 again. So from that point, we kept inviting Douglas back. And eventually Cal came. And we kind of got to a point where we were getting slowed down because Douglas only came to the States once or twice a year. And we were having trouble with trainers and people saying you're treating people. And that's when JL came to a seminar up in Minneapolis and was blown away. And of course, there's the Dave Tate story and all the West Side guys that have been reset. And we said to Douglas, hey, we want to carry this on, but we're kind of getting pulled back because you're not here. Can we teach this and move on with it and rebrand it and change the scope and make it more for coaches, make it a bigger entry point because Douglas's courses were kind of expensive and for 2 days. And I said, I can do this in a day and we can cut the price in half so we can get a lot more young coaches in because a young coach does not make a lot of money. But yet we want to share this with people. And so about a year ago, Cal and I went out to Columbus to JL's place, and we held we taught it for the first time, and that's where JL came up with the idea of RPR. And the 4 of us are all in business together. Douglas is kind of like the silent partner, and the 3 of us run it. And it's taken off from there. I think in the powerlifting world, JL has a pretty good voice in that. He knows what he's talking about. He's a smart dude. In strength training, weightlifting world, Cal is, one of the leaders. And I'm a high school track coach, so I can talk to the high school people, because some of the other coaches don't want to have anything to do with a high school guy. So I kind of cover that base. And so from there, we've been pushing it. We're running clinics. We just opened up a level 2. I taught the first level 2. Cal's doing one this weekend, which was really kind of mind-blowing stuff. Kenna Smoke, she's the strength coach at West Point. She wrote a great overview of what happened at level 2. And we're building on it. We have RPR Neuro coming, where it works with vision and hearing, the vestibular system, and colors. Again, we're just trying to peel back the layers of what it takes to be an elite athlete and get people there easier. We're also coming up with an RPR warm-up, where we're going to apply the reset points with some neurologic movements to really get the body tuned up, so we know you're doing great movement patterns instead of doing a warm-up and you're not really sure what's going on. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We're trying to find places down south and out on the West Coast to run it. But in the Midwest, it's big. In Illinois, it's really big. I would say a good 20-25% of the track teams in the state of Illinois use it. Down at the state track meet, there are over a dozen tables out with coaches resetting their athletes. But what's even greater about it is the fact that you can have athletes be responsible for themselves and reset themselves. There's a lot of modalities out there that you need someone to press on you. I think RPR is one of the few ones that you can reset yourself. And it's empowering to be able to take care of yourself. Or I teach my teams how to do it, and I have teammates take care of teammates, which is what you want. I mean, that's responsibility. That's, creating a bond. You're responsible for your guy, your teammate, your buddy, your partner.
And I guess,
so that's kind of where we're at.
No, yeah. And that's really cool stuff. And I think, though, one thing I would want to ask when it comes to that is, what are some FAQs you get or some misconceptions that people bring to you about RPR that you're just kind of either over answering or you hear quite often, just to kind of clear the air a bit?
Well, I think everyone looks for research. Well, what's the research behind it? Well, there isn't any. Doug's a South African surfer who doesn't care about research. It works. That's all we care about. So as the three of us are coaches in the realm that we're in, we're not looking for research either, because I can put you on the table and reset you, and you're going to get up and say, I feel awesome. I haven't felt like this in years. Look, my shoulder works, my hip works. I don't know why we have to do research to do that. What percent do you feel better? Do we have to get out the happy faces and you move your happy face to where you are on a scale to see how you feel after this? I mean, here, let me do one spot and tell me if you feel better. And that's really what it's about. And if we have an athlete that feels better and they feel stronger and they feel light, that's what I want. I want to put my athlete out on the field that feels invincible, not one that has to worry about a concussion or all the scare stuff that goes on out there, or I don't want to blow my ACL. I don't want to turn my ankle. If you go out and feel invincible, you're going to play better and you're going to have less chance of injury just from that mental mindset alone. But realistically, if you go through the muscle test and all that, your body truly is stronger and you feel different when you move and you feel more stable. And we have the teams that I have worked with, we have had a drastic decrease in injuries, I'm a high school teacher, and one of the things for me is 5 minutes before the bell rings, I call it passing period of broken dreams, because all the kids come out with their sprained ankle, their blown ACL, whatever they've got going on, and they've got their mule, their friend that carries their book bag. And to me, that's heartbreaking, because a lot of these kids work really hard to get where they're at. There's a lot of expectations. The magical college scholarship is always dangling out there with parents and things like that. And I'm watching it like, this is horrible. We've got to do something to stop this. We've got to do something where kids can go through their 4 years in high school and not have to go see an orthopedic surgeon and go through the whatever injury thing and take 4 to 6 months out of your life and have to worry about that the rest of your life, whether it's the scar on your knee or it never really feels right and stuff like that. So from a high school perspective, a high school coach perspective, that's kind of what we're shooting at there. If we can give kids something to empower them, to make them be healthier and more injury free, you got to do it. You got to do it. I'm not here to make sure the orthopedic surgeon drives the newest Mercedes. I'm here to make sure kids have a great 4 years in high school in athletics.
No, yeah, I've had one experience with it, and Cal threw me on the floor, almost literally, in the exhibit hall at NSCA National.
He's not afraid to throw anyone on the floor.
Oh,
I mean,
no,
he doesn't care where it happens either.
There's never been a truer statement in the history of man than what you just said there. But yeah, it was interesting enough that we're actually like looking to bring one of you guys in to go through it, because it's this is going to sound really weird to anyone listening who hasn't been through it, but Cal just looked at me like I was just asking how the weather was. When he was done, I felt like I was taller.
Yeah, because your body's not imploding anymore. Our body protects itself. Various stages of fight or flight, and you implode. I mean, you bring your rib cage down to your hips. You're protecting your organs, all that stuff. And what RPR does is it gets your body to explode, where you can separate. And once you separate, you can have range of motion in your torso, where you can twist. And really, rotation is really one of the things that separates us from even other primates. You don't see a chimpanzee rotating and throwing stuff. I mean, they're arm throwers when they throw their poop and stuff like that. We rotate, but with all the core stuff that we do, where we're constantly driving our rib cage to our hips, we lose our rotational aspect.
It's interesting, but no, it was very eye-opening. It was very question-inducing to the point where I wanted to do it again, and it was really kind of an uncomfortable situation.
It is. There's some pressure involved.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, even though Cal's a big guy, he's really not pressing that hard. The reset points are defensive points. And so your body knows that that's not working, so it's going to try and protect that, and it's going to give you a pain signal. It's kind of that a little along the lines of the polyvagal stuff. So if you take someone that's reset and you press on the same spot, they don't feel it. But someone who's not there, someone who's what we would say off, it's going to hurt. There's some pressure involved there. And I'm sure Cal probably started screwing around and may have pressed a little harder than he normally would have, just to get some kind of response.
Oh, and then response.
So, yeah, it's one of those things. But like you said, when you get up, I don't know. I have never had I've had one person that get up and says, "I don't feel anything." Then that's your process. That's great that you don't feel anything, but you test stronger, and that's good. But most everyone gets up and it's like, "Wow, what just happened here? I feel completely different. Look, I can touch my toes. I can twist. I can take my arm and wrap it around my head. I haven't been able to do that for years." Yeah. And again, we're not treating anything. We're not performing any kind of therapy. We're just letting the body know that it can use the muscles that it should. And once you do that, the brain gives the muscles length and allows it to move freely. It doesn't have to protect anymore.
No, it's really fascinating stuff. And Chris, I think that's an awesome spot to leave it at, man, because I think this is something that people need to look into more. I think that all the things we talked about today are things that we as coaches need to take a bigger look at when it comes to why we're actually programming what we're programming and what the results are actually indicative as to the play of the student athletes we work with. And then what can we do better to handle their welfare are two things that are really huge points, and things that I think that at times maybe, overlooked for the tradition.
Yeah, those are all good things. All good things to think about.
But yeah, Chris, I really appreciate the time tonight, man, and we'll get this up real soon. People are going to love it.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. We'll be in touch real soon.
Great. Thanks.
And a huge thanks to Chris Korfist for being so open and honest and just candid with his sharing today. I can't thank him enough for spending the time with us and talking about everything, where he sees exercise, different exercises he's seen carry over when it comes to actual sprint performance. And of course, the whole story behind RPR, I think, is something that all of us are really interested in right now. So I can't thank him enough. This was really an awesome talk. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed it, please share it through the social media outlet of your choice. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. Again, just trying to share great information with all the great coaches out there. And, guys, if you did like it, please hit that like button. Please leave a review on iTunes or Podomatic. That way we can keep spreading the word and keep letting people know what we're trying to do here when it comes to the content. And as always, guys, thank you for everything you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.